counter you're putting on these?
Granite.
Granite, right?
Renaissance at Carmichael is taking shape.
Yeah. So you're starting to fill this in.
Structures built to withstand the elements will welcome upwards of 60 new homeowners this quarter as government policy brings home ownership within the reach of thousands more Bahamians.
As we maintain our focus on reducing the cost of living and creating more opportunities for Bahamians, affordable opportunities for home ownership are an essential component for our blueprint for a fairer, more prosperous Bahamas. We welcome the Central Bank of the Bahamas' recent decision to ease guidelines for domestic banks and credit unions regarding residential mortgages. This move, reducing the minimum equity requirement and eliminating the mortgage indemnity insurance for lower down payments, is a significant step forward. It promises to lower the cost burden for many aspiring homeowners and expands credit access to additional qualified borrowers. This policy change, aligning with our government's commitment to affordable housing, marks a pivotal moment in making the Bahamian dream of homeownership more than attainable and financially manageable for our citizens. I know that for a long time, these guidelines have been a major barrier for many otherwise hardworking and responsible Bahamians. It is my hope that in making this adjustment, we have opened the door to accessible mortgages for many suitable families. Today, I'm happy to see the work getting done. We are now preparing the most comprehensive approach yet. Our frontline response to the present crisis is to bring forward a strategy which is already in the advanced stages of planning. Our approach lies in 3 stages: clear, hold, and build. Clear out the gangs from our neighborhoods. Our police, armed with new resources and resolve, will strike hard against these gangs. We are not just disrupting them, we are dismantling them. Our police will hold these communities by maintaining an ongoing, relentless presence. This is an area which we think has not been addressed fully in the past. We are sending a clear message to any criminal who thinks they can make a comeback. We are here. We're here to stay, and we're not going anywhere. Lastly, we build. Not just buildings and roads, but building opportunities, building futures, building hope. This is about investing in our communities, creating opportunities that didn't exist before, and ensuring that crime is never again seen as a desirable option. For those who, despite everything, insist on engaging in criminality, understand that it boils down to 2 options. Either you accept our hands in partnership to a different way of life, or you will face the blunt instrument of the law.
Philippians chapter 2. Give up my son. Give up my daughter. In Jesus' name.
My son.
My son.
My daughter.
My daughter.
My son.
My son.
And my daughter.
My daughter.
My son.
My son.
And my daughter. My son. And my daughter.
However difficult the work, however long the night, the one thing we must never lose is our faith. We must never lose faith in our power to make change, and we must never lose faith in one another.
Let God arise and let his enemies and the enemies of the Bahamas be scattered, scattered, scattered by fire.
We thank you tonight, God, that you are about to change the hearts of men.
Every place where they gather, every place that they smoke, get ready for God to show up. Get ready for his bishop to worship.
So we pray, as King Josaphat did when he faced crisis. He sought God in prayer. And the Lord responded saying, take up your positions. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Go out to face them tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you.
At the beginning of a renewed sense of hope and to strengthen our resolve in the face of the challenges that are ahead of us.
We still need parents and grandparents to create loving and safe homes. We still need strong and virtuous men to stand up as role models and mentors, to offer the power of example. We still need neighbors and communities who care. We are Bahamians. That means we are going to step up, not give up.
Expect to break in at midnight. And give God a great shout of praise at midnight.
2 Chronicles remind us, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land.
The Office of the Prime Minister Press Office is the primary liaison between the Fourth Estate and the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Every day, we are working to build a more inclusive economy and a stronger, safer country.
Hear all of the latest developments as the Davis administration carries out the broad mandate of progress and change. Our live weekly press briefings provide full access to current newsmakers on the most topical issues of the day. We facilitate prompt responses from cabinet ministers on the latest reports and get answers on the issues that matter to you.
Will any penalties be levied against the
OPM Press Now, keeping you in the know. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. This is our first for 2024. Happy New Year to all of you, and it's good to see you as always. Well, this morning we are addressing what no one will argue is perhaps the most pressing issue facing the country today, that of crime and getting it down to manageable levels. You would have heard the Prime Minister address the country this week, speaking specifically to the Clare Hold Build strategy, which is intended to eradicate gang violence in our communities. He also spoke more broadly to the whole of government and whole of society approach, which will involve a multi-sectoral approach to crime and, of course, involve members of the public in getting crime under control. This morning, we're pleased to be joined by the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Wayne Munro. He will detail the tenets of this plan and exactly how it will be rolled out and begin to spur change within our communities. We're also joined by Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Anthony Cops-Roll, who's in those fatigues, so I know he means business. And he will speak to the urban renewal component of the crime fighting strategy. And of course, that's a program which is intended to forge closer ties between the communities and the police force. We will also speak to the Youth Guard program. I think it's about a year old now, and that has the mission of engaging young people in positive activity, providing resources for members of the public in times of natural disaster, and making young people more marketable for jobs, which of course has other implications. We will also speak to our food vendor today. We're happy to be joined by Litables, and I'll let our vendor explain exactly what that is all about. But right now, we will start things off with Minister of National Security, the Honorable Wayne Munro. Mr. Munro.
Thank you, Keishla, and good morning to members of the press here present and to the wider Bahamas watching. It cannot be denied that crime is a matter of great concern to members of the public. The Prime Minister has identified it as a top priority issue for this government. He has outlined in his address the government's approach to crime, the five-pillar approach, and specifically the approach of the police to clear, hold, and build. If I can give some background to how we arrive at this. To be very clear, from the time that the Davis administration took office, on page 50 of the Blueprint for Change, you would observe a commitment to the National Development Plan Vision 2040. And so from inception, the Davis administration has proceeded on this five-pillar plan with ministries executing their parts of it. You would have heard of a task force. I will explain how that is a slight difference. But to be very clear, the approach has always been the five-pillar approach of prevention, policing, prosecution, punishment, and rehabilitation. That can be observed in my address to the UB Public Policy Institute in March of 2023 and in many pronouncements. So the Bahamian public can be assured that this is not a knee-jerk reaction to any particular event. A significant development was an engagement of a consultant who had worked in the UK confronting gang crime and, more importantly for some developments in this country, knife crime. This consultant came to the Bahamas, was embedded with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, rode the streets with them, communicated with all levels of police force, straight from the commissioner to constable, went into our inner cities, and as a result produced a report that has been considered. And to be very clear, the consultant found that the Royal Bahamas Police Force had an understanding of the challenge and was effectively meeting it, but made recommendations as to how that approach could be improved. The first improvement I'd wish to bring to your attention that we've actualized is it was suggested that there was a need for a cohesive unit to ensure that the plan isn't being executed in silos in a matter that may have been inefficient. As a result of that, the Prime Minister directed the Crime Task Force that you heard him speak of. And so that the public can be aware, as the Prime Minister indicated, I co-chair that task force with the Minister of Education. And that is because we understand that a big part of our problem relates to how our young people are socialized, what their educational experience is. And so the Minister of Education is the co-chair of the Crime Task Force. Other ministers that serve on the task force are the Minister of Social Services. The importance of that is that ministry is responsible for guidance counselors, for welfare officers who engage with the public, who engage with young people who may be at risk. The minister responsible for urban renewal and housing is also a member of that task force, and that is in the able person of Minister Keith Bell, who himself, when he served on the force, was one of the key driving forces in the development of the initial urban renewal program that won awards across the world. Urban renewal is important when we look at the 5 pillars, as is housing. The Minister of Health is also on the task force, as in the Ministry of Health is the anti-drug grouping that participates in one of our intervention programs. And of course, health and health challenges can impact the development across the country and particularly in communities at risk. The Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture is also a member of the task force, as we obviously focus on the youth of this country, given the statistics on the age of victims and the age of offenders. The Minister of Economic Affairs is also on the task force, as, to use a Bible quote, and I hope it's not accepted as flippantly, we're told that money answereth all things. And if we are to be efficient in operations, it is important to have the persons who can advise as to budget issues present. The Prime Minister indicated that he plays a part on the task force, although he doesn't chair it. And to be quite clear, as the Chief Executive of this country, he is a man driven by the interests of the Bahamian people, and he is present because he can clear roadblocks if necessary. If any minister decides that he is bigger than a decision of the task force, it is important to have the man who appointed all of us and who can remove all of us participate in the process to move any roadblock that is met. And he is very conscientious in reminding us, as he wrote us when we were appointed, that we were appointed to do a task, and we are to carry out our instructions, each and every one of us, insofar as our instructions relate to this area. And so that is the task force. That was one of the recommendations of the consultant, because it was found that in many instances, we were engaging with what should be done, but it could be more efficiently done if it was not executed in silos, and if we were to have a task force that was charged with tracking delivery of the objectives and the goals. That being said, the 5-pillar approach that the Prime Minister has articulated, prevention, policing, prosecution, punishment, and rehabilitation, is, one would say, almost common sense. All of it, if you speak to a senior person, it would be very clear about. The context of our reality today is that 50 years after independence, we have reached this point that persons of my age set would say we could never imagine when we were young. When we were young, there was respect for authority. When we were young, children did largely as directed by parents who directed us to obey the rules. In our day, no parent would come to a school to fight a teacher. In our day, there was not dressing contrary to school rules knowingly. And so we've come this far in 50 years. And so we say and we believe that we as a people are better than this, and we can reverse this trend. Prevention focuses on the old adage that prevention is better than cure. We have all of the reports of people turning to crime earlier, and so on assuming office, the Davis administration went about reinvigorating urban renewal, and Assistant Commissioner Anthony Rolle will speak to that. And to this end, in the recent promotions, when people question the number of assistant commissioners, my answer was look at the portfolio. We believe that urban renewal is as important in driving prevention as any other aspect of policing. And so we believe that that portfolio is sufficiently significant to be represented at the executive command level of the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And I'm happy to say that the Commissioner of Police, who advanced that portfolio, clearly understands that prevention is better than cure. And so you'll hear from Assistant Commissioner Anthony Rolle on that matter. And we introduced the HYPE program into the primary school. As you see, the Commissioner of Police spoke about a young man at 16 who has already been charged with 4 murders. And so coming to office, we understood that we have to intervene at an earlier stage. The HYPE program was developed by the National Youth Development Office of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force in participation with the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Bahamas Department of Corrections. And so that was introduced as a new program under this pillar of prevention. The Rangers program, the other intervention programs were also reinvigorated. It is sad that a change of administration resulted in a departure from an accepted limb under the National Development Plan, Vision 2040, that calls for these programs. Before I leave prevention, I want to bring to this country's attention that prevention is the job of all of us. That's the reality of it. We have had too many bad instances of a grandmother attempting to hide the gun of a grandson and going to prison because of it. Prevention is something that must begin in the household and the community. But it is all of our business. And I hold out to this nation a glowing example of this in a prevention program that I intend to attend the launch of on Saturday. You may recall that the Reverend Father Scott Jupp, the assistant curate at St. Matthew's Church, was the victim of an armed robbery where his vehicle was taken from him at gunpoint. As a reaction to that, Father Jupp could have been bitter, could have sought retaliation, but what Father Jupp has done is to seek to begin a mentorship program for young people in St. Matthew's Parish. And so that recognizes that intervention and prevention is not the job solely of the government. And I think he is to be commended for that. And so I intend to be present when he launches his programs. And we encourage all civic organizations, because there are many who have intervention programs, all churches, and there are many who have intervention programs, to not become weary in good doing, and to continue your efforts, and to, if at all possible, increase them. We encourage that. We welcome that. Policing is the second limb, and under this limb, the Prime Minister announced the approach of clear, hold, build. I just came from a meeting at police headquarters with the Commissioner, ACP Roll, and other members of the executive team. I would like the public to know that the Royal Bahamas Police Force is asking for your cooperation and assistance as they go about seeking to clear your communities, your neighborhoods of dangerous criminals who mean you no good, who mean the country no good, and are motivated only by selfish interest. We have sought to equip the police since coming to office with greater manpower. We've recruited more police officers in 20 months than our predecessors did in 4.5 years because we understand the need for manpower. The Ministry of Finance and the Prime Minister acquiesced to the provision of equipment to the police, namely 100 patrol trucks all at once, because it was necessary to permit the operations that they need to carry out. We've continued to upgrade their technology, and the Prime Minister gave a teaser of increased CCTV footage with enhanced technology. I don't intend to give you the details of that, unfortunately, because informing you would also be informing criminals of what our capabilities are, and we do not wish to forewarn them, except to say, as the Prime Minister has said, stop it, or we will get you. And we are giving the police the means to get you. And so we wish to have your cooperation as the Royal Bahamas Police Force, led by its anti-gang, anti-firearm unit, moves to clear our neighborhoods. We intend and we require the public's cooperation to assist, as having cleared these miscreants out of your neighborhood, we seek to prevent their re-emergence. And the saturation patrol element is enabled by manpower and equipment. But the long-term building of your communities really will be a matter of your will, aided by the government's cooperation. And urban renewal will play a big part of that. And urban renewal is set to come back strong, with us recognizing the importance of it. Prosecution, you would have heard the President of the Bar and the Chief Justice and I have said, in line with recommendations, we're about to launch a task force there with all stakeholders to seek to speed up prosecutions. We've already started. You would have heard reports that the designation of a magistrate to hear firearms matters has already resulted in the speeding up of firearms prosecutions. Punishment is important, and we are currently consulting on a proposed conditional release of offenders bill that is proposed to include a new designation of a dangerous criminal who may be subject to a life sentence, and also with monitoring after release from a definite sentence if awarded. I travel to Eleuthera today and tomorrow to take that consultation to the people of North Eleuthera and Harbour Island, as we've taken it to other islands in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We moved then to rehabilitation. You continue to hear that 98 to 99% of the people who are sentenced to imprisonment will come out. It is important to rehabilitate them. Again, we have already begun this important work. For the first time at the Department of Corrections, you would have heard, we have mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists. For the first time, you would have heard, this Davis administration has constructed a juvenile detention center on the campus of BDOCS, where we house now all juveniles in a completely separate building from adult offenders who in the past were able to recruit juveniles at the Bahamas Department of Corrections. And the fact that you have a 16-year-old charged with 4 murders should wake all of us up to the need to prevent contamination of our young people by hardened criminals. That effort will continue with proposals to improve the residences for ordinary inmates at the correctional facility. We are all aware of the findings of the UN Human Rights Group, and no one in this country would have heard me seek to suggest that those findings are not correct. And having accepted them, this administration will do its best to improve those circumstances. And so that has been the approach. I've set out how we've already started. The consultant made it clear we can improve what we are doing, and we will continually seek to improve what we are doing. And again, I call on the Bahamian public who is concerned about crime to participate with the police and the government for what the Prime Minister rightly described as a whole of society remedy to crime. That is the only way that it will be done. And so we're calling on the participation of all of the society in this fight. With that, I would open the floor to questions. Yes. What we can do is bring on the ACP role and Captain Sonia Miller, who, in case you didn't realize it, is one of the first women promoted into the executive leadership of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. And she will be speaking on the National Youth Guard, which itself goes under the pillar of prevention. ACP role.
Yeah, that's the one again. Good. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Morning, still morning. Okay. All right. It's good to be here today. As stated, I'm Assistant Commissioner of Police Anthony Roll with the responsibility of urban renewal. And I think that I come before you probably as an expert in that area. I'm not just somebody who happens to be in charge now, but someone who worked the grounds in urban renewal, in the community, Bearing Down in particular. So I know the importance of urban renewal, what it does for persons in our community. So I can speak from what I actually saw, what I learned from being there. So I'm a part of one of the 5 pillars that the minister spoke about in prevention. And urban renewal to me is one of the I guess, greatest crime prevention program within our country, because it represents the whole man. What do I mean by that? You might have some preventative programs that are targeting certain individuals, probably the youth, the elderly, certain sections or fragments of society, but we cover the whole family, the community. We cover business establishment, the churches, we do it all. We all know that our Prime Minister is very much committed in crime prevention and in this urban renewal program, because of the commitment of our government, they have allowed our commissioner to make a responsibility that is headed by an assistant commissioner, so which is good. And our Prime Minister, in one of his recent communications, spoke about, and I quote, "We will reclaim our streets, our neighborhoods, and our homes." Crime preclusion is at the heart of our Prime Minister, who has reiterated the need for enhanced police engagement towards reducing crime, and particularly involving our youths. Of course, our commissioner is very much on board because, every year he comes with a plan, a policing plan, and priority 5 in his 2023 plan speak to that of proactive approach to youth and gang violence. So he's very much on board with crime prevention. And the Royal Bahamas Police Force, we have amplified existing programs such as our Police Cadet, Urban Renewal Band, STANCE, which is Students Together Against Negative Decision, LEAP, Law Enforcement Education and Empowerment Program, and we will introduce new initiatives to keep our youth positively engaged and to provide mentorship and empowerment for meaningful opportunities. We know that urban renewal, which is the brainchild of our former Prime Minister, the Honorable Perry Christie, and was introduced in 2002. And I always stopped the wonder minister if the program was allowed to run consecutively from 2002. All the years, that'll be like 21 years. Our country would have been in a better place today. That's my belief, and I strongly believe that. And we are not just there. There are our goals and objectives. And people always ask the question, what is urban renewal? And I always smile when I get that question, because I always remember as a young boy growing up, there was a store on Bay Street called the Stop and Shop. And they had their logo or their cliche, whatever, was they were all the stores in Bay Street rolled into one. So if you wanted a cologne, you could go there. If you wanted grocery, you could go there. If you wanted hardware, you could go there. So I look at urban renewal as a combination of different agencies within our Bahamas, within our government, that have come together to tackle crime, to prevent crime, to reduce the fear of crime within our community. And it's intended to be headed by the police. Now, a lot of people love getting into little issues as to why the police. But just in our meeting earlier today, Mr. Christie, who was the person that implemented this program, spoke of the fact that the authority and the presence that the police bring in the community was the reason why he wanted to choose. He chose the police to head it. And that's something that I have witnessed. And because, I put things to test. In 2012, when I went in Bantam, there was an environmental health worker, I forget her name, slips me now, and she went into Bantam and to Tiger car, remove it within 14 days. 14 days came, the car was still there. She went back. She got no positive or favorable response from the resident. And so we went with her. We didn't say anything, but just our presence being on the side of her, she was able to get the person to move the car. So that's the authoritative figure. When you go into the community, urban renewal is that if there's a problem that needs to be addressed by the defense force, they are there. As opposed to we have to leave, go, call social services, call environmental health, call Ministry of Works. Everybody is present in the community so we could get the job done on time and swiftly. There are some objectives in urban renewal, 5 main objectives for urban renewal. And as the police officer, our main objective is to reduce crime. So to me, I always say, I got teased when I was young in the job for feeding old people, playing hopscotch or whatever with little kids. But whatever it takes or whatever me personally have to do to prevent crime, I'm willing to do. So if it takes me, I have to go and carry a bag of grocery to an elderly lady, I will do that. All right, so our objectives are to prevent crime and reduce the fear of crime within our communities. And we all know now, even though the crime, we might go a whole month without a murder, because that's what everybody is more rally up about, but that fear is still there. We want to remove the fear that a resident will be scared to come out of the house after dark, to go to church, to go to the food store, just to congregate in their yard. We want to remove that fear. Number 2 would be to identify and tackle the main causes of social conditions which promotes the occurrence of crime and deviant behavior. Now, a lot of people tend to believe that there is no correlation between crime and, let's say, unemployment. Something that happened to me in 2012 in Bainton also. In my first 2 weeks, Minister, 2 guys came to my office from Bainton. And, I was downstairs because my office was upstairs. And one of the guys said, officer, he said, I come to you, I have no money. My daughter, young child is home. I don't have no money to buy Pampers. So I said, boy, this is like the first 2 weeks. So he said, officer, I thinking about some things. Nobody thinking about some things. So just hearing that, I said, come. And I took him to my office. We went upstairs. I go into my pocket. I had probably about $100 in my pocket. I didn't know it was the full 100. I thought it was 50-50. So I pulled it out, and I had to give him that. And there was 2 of them. There's a gentleman who came to me probably a few hours looking for some assistance. He was one of the managers at Bay Street Garage. I called him, just did him a favor. I said, I need a job. And he was able to give one of the young men a job. And I saw him, and he's not on that job. He worked that job from 2012 up to the pandemic in 2019 or 2020. And I think that's because the company laid off a few persons. So it works. If we didn't provide for that young man, who knows? He would have gone and probably committed a robbery. All right. One of our next objective is to examine and improve the quality of life and social and environmental condition of high crime communities. Now, we are in our first weekend back in the community. All right, thanks to our commissioner. He has mobilized us back to the community again. But we have not had an opportunity to go in and conduct any door-to-door assessments. But what I can tell you, in 2012, we did door-to-door assessment, and the things we found while in Bainton, to the point the first day when we did those assessments, I go on home, opened up my cupboards, called my kids. They were young. I said, look in the cupboard. And it's like, Daddy, what? I said, look in the cupboard. I said, what you see? Grocery. I said, persons in the community doesn't have this. You understand? They don't have this. So we have seen persons when you walk in their home, they have the rug down, but they are pointing to you and say, don't walk in that area. Because you will go straight to the floor. You look up and you see in the sky. Because there are some conditions that people live in our country. Maslow speaks about the hierarchy of needs. And we have persons in our communities, some of our communities, that can't say that they have these basic needs, human needs, and it's our job to do whatever we can do to try and assist those persons. In 2012, between 2012 and 2017, I've had the opportunity to personally partner with the community to construct 2 homes. 2 homes for members in the community who are living in horrible condition. First one was on Finlayson Street and Bowler Alley, where a family, 2 sets of twins, 2 sisters. Every time I go, people was at me, you gotta help them, you gotta help them, you gotta help them, you gotta help them, you gotta help them. And days, weeks went by, until I heard the story, someone from the corner came and said, hey, that one of the little girls had to go to the hospital last night. I said, why? Because she was crying, profusely crying. And as a mother, the first thing you'll do is put the bottle in the child's mouth. She didn't take the bottle, she just crying. And when they check, it was a female, a centipede, could you imagine, was locked on the inner thigh of that young girl's leg. And that prompted me to construct a home for them. And while we were constructing it, Minister, people were coming to me saying, oh, she's there for them, she's there for them. It doesn't matter. She was a human. She was a member of my community. We had to do that. The second home was on Labor Street. An elderly gentleman, we went in, the community keep coming at me to help change his living condition. I went there when I decided to go, when I pull up to the front of the house, it was, it looked good. I said, would you bring me the front looked good. When I walked to the back, he was living in a corner because the house was destroyed by fire. So these are the things that we have to do. My time may be running out. Also to involve the community in problem solving and empower our citizens to play an active role in our community. This is very important. We don't want to just go in and give a fish. We provide jobs so that they could go out and provide for themselves. We have groups like form committees, youth empowerment committees, neighborhood watch committees, so that they could come together and empower themselves, find out that, hey, we need this park to be here, we need to clean up this area, and this is what we did. Also, lastly, we identified the problem facing our youths, our young people, and engage them in positive activities and programs geared towards making productive citizens. And we all know about our band. Our band is, we call it world-renowned Royal Bahamas Police Force Band. We have a world-renowned Urban Renewal Band. We have, Mr. Christie spoke about it in our meeting earlier. We have had band, people who went through the Urban Renewal Band, they are doctors, they are nurses, they are on the police force, they are on the defense force, they were with the prison band. Some of them went off to school, they run in business, so it is working. It is working, and the discipline you get from being a part of a band or playing musical instrument, trust me, I don't know how to play one. So I actually celebrate with persons who could pick up a musical instrument and play it. So it's really working. And Urban Renewal, moving forward, we are there to improve the quality of life for people in those communities. As we go through all our communities, we'll do door-to-door assessments. We will go door to door. We'll identify abandoned homes. We'll identify with derelict vehicles and overgrown lots. And we have found in the past, in urban renewal, we have found guns, illegal guns. We have found dangerous drugs in these vehicles, in these houses, and also in the bushes. So these are the things that criminals use. I know you have heard a lot of stories, reports from Ms. Skippins or from the police that the young man emerged from the bush and did his act. So it's our job to go in, a part of the clear, whole, and build. That's what we're all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner Rolle. We'll now invite questions on the issue of crime, perhaps on tenets of the crime-fighting plan for either the Minister or the Assistant Commissioner. Questions, please.
Afternoon. Now that it seems widely accepted that we have a gang problem, is there anything about the specific nature of these gangs, the movements of these gangs, who they are, and anything that you can share that you'd be willing to share with the public?
Well, the problem of gangs go back actually to the 60s and 70s with the drug epidemic. The research by the police and the consultant have shown, and they classify gangs into particular ranks. And to get it quite clearly, you have first-generation gangs, you have second-generation gangs, and you have third-generation gangs. And first-generation gangs are just groups of people who aren't really organized and just committing violence and minor crime, no major identified leader. You have second-generation gangs who have criminal operations for profit. So these are the ones that sell drugs, want to try and control areas. And because that is what they're seeking to do, you then have more violence, more shootings. And then you have the third generation gangs that seek to increase and monopolize area, who may be involved with the import of drugs that may then be distributed to second generation gangs to sell, and also exporting drugs. And they tend to use, with the change in how drug trafficking happens, violence to intimidate people to either sell their drugs or not to sell their competitors' drugs. And so you have different number of those types of gangs identified by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And the anti-gang and firearms unit is active in dealing with it. You may have seen during the pandemic an unfortunate release of a Zoom video from the person who then headed that unit discussing the matter. But the Royal Bahamas Police Force is alive to that. And one of the things the Prime Minister mentioned is we're looking at more effective anti-gang legislation, inclusive of more effective civil injunction against their assets and more effective forfeiture provisions. Everything that we do has to be tailored to fit our circumstance. And so you can look at the US or Europe and look at their provisions, but they are an income tax regime where you have to declare for income tax, so you know basically what people say their income are. We have no income tax here. You do have national insurance, but that has set with ceilings, and then there are certain realities. So whenever we look at legislation, be it anti-gang in relation to how they identified the financial parts of it, we have to take care to tailor the provisions to fit this country.
And in tailoring, in tailoring that, what is it going to, I guess, consist of, right? Because I know your comments recently about anti-gang legislation was that we must craft something that's not likely going to be struck down. Could you elaborate on that a bit more, considering that this gang situation is fueling the crime crisis?
The starting issue is this: how do you prove someone is in a gang? There are issues about the burden of proof. One of the most vexing things is your relationships are often known by the persons themselves who are in a relationship. So the nature of the Bahamas is this: a bunch of us are related to each other, eh? So if you see us together and acting in concert, are you saying we're a criminal gang? And when you charge us as being a criminal gang, I say, well, that's just my cousin. That's my brother. So the question of burdens of proof, standards of proof, have to be looked at with regard to our particular circumstances. We have legislation on our books now, and an attempted prosecution was based on somebody throwing up a sign in a social media post. You know, we have a lot of smartphones used by dumb people, right? So during the by-election, somebody recording themselves, I have the bag, I'm going to be bribing people for votes, recording an admission of a crime. So if that were to happen, then of course the current legislation, there'd be no issue of proof or any other thing. The one thing I can tell you is, bearing in mind what I did for a living for 30-something years, I know exactly how you can attack any piece of legislation. And by the time we advance, and the Attorney General indicated they're looking at legislation now, by the time you see something tabled in Parliament, the Bahamian public can be guaranteed that Wayne Monroe Casey would have told the Attorney General, everyone, exactly how he would attack the legislation, and so that we can safeguard against any weakness in it. It is pointless to put legislation in place that is not firm and effective.
And so are you suggesting that the current laws that are put in place now to deal with gangs, are you suggesting that as is they're not effective?
Well, I would address that like this. It's been in place for some time, right? The police have their intelligence of who these gang members are. The fact that you've not had a multiplicity of prosecutions would indicate that the current law in our reality has issues around proof that are challenging, and that is what we're looking at to address. It is pointless and just to rush it out and say, I have anti-gang legislation, unless you can effectively use it.
Hi, Shonda. So I know you already went through the crime plan, but during the interview we would have conducted with Dr. Sands in Effingham, he described the plan as being vague and having a lot of recycled information that the administration has previously said. So do you have any response to that?
Well, dealing with the last one first. Recycle information says that you're being consistent, right? Now, unless you're going to have knee-jerk reactions, you should be consistent in what you do. The stopping and starting is the problem. ACP Rural has already showed you. You have urban renewal, going strong, going well, addressing the needs of people. The government changes, and simply because it was not your plan, you stop it with the problems that that causes. Consistency is the issue. This is a problem of societal decay. To stop and start is not the issue. On vagueness, the curiosity is, Father Scott Jupp figured it out, eh? Didn't he? Church of God of Prophecy on Shirley Street figured it out. The Anglican Diocese in its mentoring program figured it out. The Christian Council in its partnership with National Security for the Suicide and Counseling Hotlines figured it out. A whole range of civic organizations figured it out. If Dr. Sands has problems figuring it out, he can ask, not just me, but any of the other varied individuals and groups who have figured it out and are now participating with us. And so that would be my answer to him. You know, they say, Bob Marley has a lyric, in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. So the fact that you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
In terms of one of the pillars that you would have mentioned, it has an introduction of facial recognition, the CCTV. In some international reports, it claims that with that system, it has a hard time distinguishing Black people. I don't know if you've been aware of some of those claims with that type of system. So are you concerned that might lead in there being false arrests or anything like that?
The complaint there is that it leads to you arresting the wrong person. I don't know the difference between that and ordinary eyewitness identification. Because in ordinary cases, judges tell juries that visual identification can be mistaken. And they're not talking now about a picture that you can freeze. So if you have facial rec, where we have a shooting here, you query the system and it says the person who shot the person is at the podium at OPM press office, and they come and pick me up. When they sit me down, at some point, since the evidence is the original recording, they will look at the original recording and say, oh, that's not Monroe. I will be inconvenienced by having been arrested on suspicion, but being arrested on suspicion and held for up to 48 hours is part of the price we pay for living in a free, democratic, orderly society. And so this is what the Prime Minister talks about when he talks about potential inconvenience. So the facial recognition, the artificial intelligence component could lead to them wrongly identifying you because it looks very close to the person who did it. But when you sit down and now look at the picture, you'll be able to say, it's not you, sorry. But that's the point about it. As we expand the coverage of CCTV footage, the beauty of technology is that it could exonerate you just as well as it could implicate you. So if somebody were wrongly identifying you based on a visual identification, if you don't have the CCTV, you will get charged because the person will pick you out of a lineup, and we have what the judges say, but if you have the CCTV footage, we'll be able to stop it, look, and be able to say, that's not the person. Just as well as when we have it, and you say, the prosecutor could very well say, argue with the photo because we have you on tape. So it is a tool that can free the innocent and definitely convict the guilty.
Minister, several days ago, Commissioner Fernando expressed concerns with the anklet monitoring system, right? He revealed that this suspect who was allegedly killed this man on East Street or near the hill, he was out on bail for murder, but they found his EMS in some lake in Western New Providence, right? And so clearly
But it was tracked to a lake in Western New Providence.
So, given that, right, is the government satisfied with the anklet monitoring operations and the current contract, and if not, what action is being taken to address that? Because there have been numerous concerns from police that the system is simply ineffective, it's not getting the job done.
Well, as I've said previously, that's the position of the police. The vendor says that they have a strap alert, says that it provides SMS text messages to a range of police officers in the EMD section and other police officers, because every device ever created can be removed. The challenge is knowing when that happens to respond effectively. The police have a complaint. The vendor company, when the complaint is made, tends to email their records of SMS alerts on the straps. And as the commissioner himself has said, it's not my function to talk about assessing blame. We look at what happens, we look at what you say, we look at what you say, and we try to resolve the matter. The police are saying what they're saying. The vendor is saying, look, every time somebody does that, you instantly get a text message to say, so-and-so has done this, and you can locate him at that point, but you all don't respond. So the finger pointing is something that is not productive, and the commissioner says to me that they will meet to resolve it. Because quite frankly, you say you're not doing your job, and they say the police aren't doing their job, and the objective that we have is to maximize the use and efficiency of any technology. Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Now, you have touted government success in recruiting, you have touted government success in recruiting lots more officers, and, police talked about his efforts to beef up police patrol. We've seen that with the trucks being proliferated throughout the capital. But the reality is, based on the feedback from residents, they're growing wary of police's ability to crack down on crime. Now, based on the measures that you spoke about and the pinpoints that you've spoken about, have, in your view as the minister, have those measures proven to be successful in the fight against crime?
I think there was a news report that got the actual figures from 2023, and perception may be one thing. The numbers for everything other than sexual offenses is trending down. And so the reality of it is that where you did not have patrol vehicles available, because since we have addressed it now, I can say in some family islands, there was no vehicle. In some police divisions here, the police couldn't respond to you because there were only 3 policemen in the station. And it takes 3 policemen just to keep the doors of the station open. And so the frustration, the deficit, and even in the stations with 4 and 5, God help you if their car goes down and is in for servicing, because then they don't have anything to respond to you. Since we have increased recruitment and increased transportation to them, that is being addressed. Is it at an optimal level yet? No. Because as I said, we have recruited more manpower in 20 months than they did in 4.5 years. So when you let something run down, at some stations now, we may have 6 people where we should have 9, and we're working on that. But the reality of it is, the public can be assured the increased manpower of the police permits us to address it. And when I go to Eleuthera, I know that the OC of the area that I go to is going to say they need more police officers. And so you have to continue to recruit. I do not understand how our predecessors did not understand that. You have to provide manpower. My predecessor was an executive level police officer. So I suspect that he knew he needed manpower. He may not have been able to get the cooperation of the Minister of Finance, as I am able to get the cooperation of the Minister of Finance in this administration, who happens to be the Prime Minister, to understand the police's cry, the Defense Force's cry, the Department of Corrections cry for manpower. and he has approved the manpower. Our Prime Minister has approved the manpower. I am persuaded that my predecessor in this office, having been a Deputy Commissioner of Police, would have known the need for manpower. I'm quite sure that he likely asked for it. But you need a cooperative Minister of Finance to get your manpower, to get your equipment. So I'm persuaded that Minister Dames likely asked for both manpower and equipment and couldn't persuade his Minister of Finance to comply. It just happens that when I ask for it, the Minister of Finance in this administration, understanding what is necessary, sees the need to do it and does it.
Minister, the opposition has also expressed concern about the Prime Minister's statement that there will be intrusive police measures used in this crime fight, and they worry, as do others, that this could potentially lead to abuses of people's rights and or breaches by the police. Anything you want to say to allay concerns in that regard?
They clearly didn't listen to all that the Prime Minister said. The Prime Minister said right after that steps would be taken to ensure that the police are sensitive and respectful of people's rights. Our Prime Minister is a human rights lawyer. There's no way under the sun that he is going to countenance any deliberate policy to infringe people's rights. And so, for instance, you may have remembered that in my ministry, we're looking at greater civilianization of the police complaints process. Next week at Parliament, we'll be debating the Ombudsman Bill, which is a next step of protection that we are putting in place for people who have complaints about the action of public agencies, which will include the police. What the Prime Minister is speaking of, when you're in traffic because the police are doing a road check, that's inconveniencing you. Some people suggest that the fact that I'll put it like this, we may or may not have technology that captures your license plate and permits us to hunt through all of the places that license plate has appeared, or capture your face. And if the police are looking for you, hunt through the history to see where all you have been, so where you are likely to be, or for that matter, where you are now. Some people regard that as intrusive. In my view, since you are in a public place, you have no expectation of privacy in a public place. So whereas you may see it as intrusive, it does not, in my judgment, violate your right. And the beauty of this country is, if you believe it does, the courts are open and judges of the Supreme Court are available 7 days a week for you to vindicate your right. And I know that because when I was in practice, I was able to move a judge of the Supreme Court on a Sunday. So the Prime Minister is clear, and we're going to use technology, but we're going to be respectful of people's rights.
Thank you very much, Minister Monroe. Thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner. We are going now to talk with Lieutenant Commander Sonia Miller of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Captain, excuse me, I demoted her there, and I wouldn't dare do such a thing to this prestigious woman. But she's going to give us details of the National Youth Guard, which is seeking to start its second cohort. Captain, welcome.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister, members of the press, Bahamas. I am Captain Sonia Miller of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and I am also the coordinator of the National Youth Guard program. I am here today to provide you with a brief overview of the National Youth Guard program. The National Youth Guard was established to create a core group of young Bahamians who are equipped to help the nation respond to national disasters or emergencies. This program consists of several key components with focus on youth empowerment, job readiness, youth advocacy in the form of a second chance, and volunteerism. The National Youth Guard was founded, the National Youth Guard found its genesis under the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture, and has recently expanded to the Ministry of National Security. Guards are being provided with specialized training by members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, as we are one of the key agencies to respond to disasters or national emergencies within this country. Also lending support to the program are other key public and private partners, such as the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, the National Training Agency, the National Emergency Management Agency, and a number of other public and private agencies and companies. The program key objectives are to establish a comprehensive training curriculum focused on technical, soft, life, leadership, and emergency response skills. Enhance the Bahamas National Disaster Preparedness and Response capabilities. Provide youth with opportunities for employment, education, and entrepreneurship. Foster a sense of national pride, unity, community service amongst the participants. So we asked the question, who is eligible for this training? Very easy, Bahamas. You must be 18 or 25 years of age, available for 10 weeks living training on board HMBS Coral Harbor Base, be a citizen of the Bahamas, physically and mentally capable of participating in the program, interested in providing service to our country. Unfortunately, you must not have a criminal record. To date, Cohort 1 saw 64 young Bahamians successfully complete and graduate from the program. The National Youth Guard is presently recruiting for Cohort 2 and will begin to recruit for Cohort 3 in mid-March for intake in June. Those wishing to take part in this dynamic program can apply by accessing our online application by logging on to nyg@bahamas.gov.bs. And for further information, you can contact the Ministry of National Security at 502-3023 or 502-3300. Just a little bit about the program. The program is broken into 3 phases. Phase 1 consists of a 10-week paid training on board HMBS Coral Harbor Base. Phase 2, paid internship for 6 weeks. Phase 3, on-call service for 18 months. As a small island development state, the Bahamas feels the impact of climate change. We see this in the frequency and the intensity of hurricanes and other significant weather hazards. Therefore, this program, such as the National Youth Guard, we seek to safeguard our future by taking steps to build capacity and to strengthen the Bahamas' disaster response mechanism. I wish to highlight that this particular program is a great opportunity for young adults who are not ready for college and who may not be working. However, more importantly, this program speaks to those who feel the call to national service and those who want to be on the front line in times of a crisis. The National Youth Guard also provides opportunities for those who may have interest in and have the prerequisites to qualify them to join one of the uniformed branches under the Ministry of National Security. So I wish to use this opportunity to encourage those tuning in today who falls within the specified categories to step forward and join in the fight against making a difference within this country. Again, you can access our online application by logging on to nyg@bahamas.gov.bs. And for further information, you can contact the Ministry of National Security at 502-3023 or 502-3300. Thank you. Any questions? I said it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain. And I've kept you here for quite some time today, but I have a little treat. We introduce now very quickly our food vendor for today, Lidables. She will introduce herself and tell you about her food business.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Let me get my little speech that I prepared ready. But my name is Rashawn Bowe. I am the owner and sole proprietor of Lidables. I hope you guys bought your sweet tooth today. I am more than excited and delighted to share this innovative and creative product with you guys. It's a product that I started in my kitchen just over 4 years ago over the pandemic. Like most people, when they lost their jobs, of course, we all know what they did. They opened up small businesses. When I first started, I strictly made drinks, which are alcoholic slushies. And I think that was mainly sparked by the fact that I have aunties and both my mother as well. They always sold frozen cups during the summers, and they sold to children in the neighborhood. Me personally, I always hated it. Every single time I would hear the doorbell ring, I would be like, not another cup. But I guess you can say here I am now asking everybody to take my cups outside. Also, too, just recently, last July, I started practicing making candied fruits. So at this point, I offered candied pineapples. It seems that I have just reinvented this brand over and over again. The most that I can say that it is a party for your taste buds. But once again, I would like to thank Ms. Keishla Smith for inviting me here today. I am just so grateful. I would never imagine that Lidables would land me in a room like this. But I hope you guys enjoy. Today I brought samples of my alcoholic slush. I heard that this is the first time that alcohol is in the building, so don't tell on me. And I also brought samples of the candied fruits. So I hope you guys enjoy, and that's all I really had to say about it. That's it? Alrighty, thank you. Pardon? That's it, and vodka to be exact. So I hope everybody here enjoys vodka. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, LaShawn. And she may have gotten me in trouble. I don't know, but I hope you enjoyed anyway. Thank you so much. We ran a little quite over our time today. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you got everything you needed. And of course, we're always here when you need any information and guidance. Yes, the Prime Minister is in Uganda. He's there attending the G77 summit. The objectives are to liaise with other countries. We want to broaden our diplomatic footprint, get into those rooms that we need to get into, so that during times of or situations, crises, etc., in the world, that we are in a position to liaise with other countries, have the authority, and be in those, excuse me, be in those settings, be around the table to deal with those issues. So it's primarily settings to allow the Prime Minister to liaise and be able to have a better communication with other countries and further the strategies that affect the Bahamas and the rest of the world. But we will release something later today detailing further what the plans are for that meeting. Yes. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.